Hi guys, it's TheFrXion here, or Tiger Tank 12. However you can call me, I don't really care. Welcome back to World of Tanks, where we're taking a look at the 122 TM. This is a Chinese Tier 8 premium medium tank, and probably one of the well and most liked ones in the game. Even though you have some great competition with the Type 59, with the T-34-3, and even with the 59 patent, which isn't as great as either one of those options. But with the 122 TM, you get a really interesting little vehicle. This tank comes, with a 120 millimeter gun, basically on a chassis of a tank that would resemble pretty much a tier 10 vehicle. The 122 TM has a lot of things going for it, but one of the main things it lacks is DPM. So let's go right into it. This tank has 400 alpha, and it has some really good penetration with the APCR shells, which are standard. Then you have heat shells, which are the premium ones, and then you have high explosive shells. High explosive shells, pretty much no real penetration, very bad shell velocity. I wouldn't pick too many of them. Then high explosive anti-tank shells, you can see shell velocity is okay, but the average penetration is incredible. Almost 300 millimeters of penetration at tier 8. That is really good. Now moving on to the APCR shells, and these are the stars of the show. They have very good shell velocity with 1,368 meters per second, basically tier 10 levels, and then 233 millimeters of penetration. For a tier 8 premium medium tank, that is really good. Having that amount of penetration will allow you to basically go through anything at tier 8 and even tier 9 and 10 if you're able to hit the weak spots. That means a lot of players get this tank to farm a lot of credits because they have very reliable APCR ammunition penetration, but on the other hand, if they really need to dip into the premium shells, well, they have quite a lot of penetration with those heat shells. So now let's go to the bad. Now the shell velocity, very good. The rate of fire, not very good. The tank itself only has a rate of fire of, I think, below 5. You cannot get it to 5. It's very difficult to get the DPM higher than that I have right now. And you can see, if you look at the equipment I'm running, the gun rammer is a must on this tank in my opinion. I'm also using a directive, and I'm using premium consumables. So basically this tank, well, it doesn't really do very well without any of these things, because it has a very bad DPM. The DPM is, I think, at get-go about 1,400 with Brothers in Arms, and you have about 3.7, 3.6 rounds per minute, so that's pretty atrocious. This is one of the biggest downsides of the tank, coupled with its gun traverse speed. But other than that, if you can manage to get the DPM down to 13.74 and you're willing to use improved combat rations or maybe even directives, you can get this down to 13.74, which is still quite a long time to reload for a tier 8 medium tank, but much better than the 17 seconds I had to reload prior. But obviously, if you take away the premium consumables, you're going to lose quite a bit of DPM, but still 14.35 seconds, I think that is still pretty good. But I'm willing to use the premium consumables to get a little bit more out of it, because I'm a long-term player, I'm a veteran, I've played a lot of games, and I have the resources to fund that. Other than that, the aim time, the dispersion are all very good. You have 8 degrees of gun depression. You're going to be able to make it work on this tank. Now the next thing that is really good on the tank is also survivability. It has 1,400 hit points, 120 millimeters of armor at the front, 80 on the side, and 280 on the turret. You have 2 weak spots on the turret with the cupolas on the left and the right. Both of them can be penetrated, and they are weak spots. Other than that, this tank is very well armored, especially the frontal armor is very thick, especially because of the nice angling that you have going for it. So this tank is difficult to take care of if you're far away, And up close, even sometimes you're going to be bouncing shots that you should probably not be bouncing with this amount of armor. Moving on to mobility, this is where I had to make some sacrifices to make this work. This tank doesn't have the best engine power, it doesn't have the best specific power to weight ratio, but it has some pretty nice 50 kilometers per hour top speed. So with that, you're going to be quite mobile. You don't weigh a lot, so do not ram anything, and your traverse speed is pretty nice for a medium tank, 51.4 degrees per second. Now, the biggest issue is just the specific power to weight ratio is a bit lacking. It takes you a while to accelerate, but if you do have the turbo on this tank, it's a lot better. With the turbo, you have about 17.8 horsepower per ton. That's a lot better, and you also get 55 kilometers per hour top speed instead of 50. But you either have to choose between the turbo and the coated optics or the vertical stabilizer, but we'll get to that. The tank itself is also decent in concealment, and spotting wise, it has a few problems. This tank has a very bad base view range of only 370 meters, which is pretty bad if you ask me. That is tier 7 levels, not tier 8. But if you use coated optics, you have a little bit of training in the view range department, you have brothers in arms, you're using premium consumables, you can get it all the way to 460 meters view range. Now, if you also get to the field modifications and you choose the scouting specialty or the special category, you're going to get an additional boost on the view range. So other than that, I went with light alloy mounting points for better hull traverse and gun traverse, improved sight for a smaller reticle, and then right here, I haven't fully unlocked it yet, but I'm not really sure. I really value concealment, so that's what I would probably go for. But if I go for concealment, I'll lose an additional 2 kilometers per hour top speed in reverse, which would make it very, very slow in backing up with only 13 kilometers per hour. So I would probably go for the turbocharger tuning to get more reverse speed, and I would suffer a little bit in the concealment department, but that would be fine because the concealment is still good enough, I'd guess. So, what about the equipment? With the equipment, it's a bit of a tough one. This is actually one of the rare occasions where I would be using two different setups. The first setup, which is basically for the max DPM output, the one setup that I would be running personally most of the time. This is where I go for doing most damage. This is where I go for trying to spot for myself and use the second category right there with coated optics. And then vertical stabilizers, because this tank does have some not so good dispersion when on the move or turning its turret. You could forego it, but it would take just a bit longer to make everything work, and it's just, it feels a lot more snappier, faster, and this is a great loadout for city engagements, close quarter combat. With the coated optics, it also allows you to spot a little bit if you're in a place where you need to see something. There's a replay that I'm going to be showing you guys in a second where it really shows off how valuable it can be. Now moving on to the second slot, where I would be playing more as a passive role, I would probably go for turbo. I would either go for turbo to be fast, to be able to reposition if I need to, or I would go for improved rotation mechanism to improve the gun traverse speed. And then I would go with the second slot for gun rammer. And with the third slot, I would think about probably vertical stabilizer, or I would here go for forego the gun rammer, go for coated optics, or maybe even, commander's vision system doesn't make any sense, but go for coated optics because it will still allow you to spot. You could also forego the improved rotation mechanism, go for improved ventilations if you don't care about the mobility, or you can raise all of the stats by quite a bit. And in this kind of way, you still have the best of both worlds. You still have a decent DPM for the tank itself. You're going to be not faster, but fast enough in my opinion. And you're going to have decent spotting. Now that is what I would go for with the second loadout, or I would also, consider maybe even taking off something else for turbocharger. Now, personally, I think the gun rammer is just very valuable on this tank, especially when you don't have a lot of DPM. So that's something I would keep on most of the time. I've been very happy with the vertical stabilizer, but maybe taking vertical stabilizer off is also an option. It would just make everything a bit more slower when you're trying to shoot something. Either way, there are a lot of different options you can go down to. Tell me what kind of configurations you have on your 122 TM, and let's move on to the gameplay. So, for gameplay, I think one game should definitely suffice. I think you can show off everything in this gameplay with the 122 TM, and I think by the general vibe of the video, you probably have already noticed that this is a tank I enjoy a lot. As I mentioned with the loadout I have currently equipped on this tank, I can have the best possible DPM, while at the same time also, well, making decent amounts of credits when I do manage to do some damage. Now, you can certainly take away the premium consumables. The DPM will not take a massive hit, it will go down a little bit, but I think every little bit of DPM will help you. So I'm using the premium consumables. It is also going to improve our spotting and concealment. We're playing on Lakeville, and this is a very nice setup. We have some tier 9 tanks, we have quite a few tier 8s, no tier 10s, so basically you don't have to rely on premium ammunition at all, because in these matchups you can basically just deal with anything, because you just have that beautiful 233 millimeters of penetration. Now, right here you can see it takes a very long time to reload. It's something you'll have to get used to when you play medium tanks. Other than the 122 TM, most of them usually load a lot faster. But this is a prime example of why having coated optics is such an important thing on the 122 TM, and why I have still used it on the second slot instead of, adding something else to improve the rate of fire. But right now we're in the middle. This is a bit of a risky play. I'm putting a lot of my faith into the armor of the vehicle, and it is actually quite strong. But I'm hoping that I can spot the batch at 25T again at the TheFrXion K over there, and at the same time, hopefully, maybe I can get some shots into the vehicles that are pushing the city. You can see that there are 3 or 4 tanks on our side holding the 1-2 line, and there's a little bit of a stalemate with quite a few tank destroyers sitting at the back, and the heavy tanks in the city are doing quite a bit of work. So I'm feeling confident that there's not a lot of things in the middle, and I'm trying to put some pressure on the middle by driving forward, and I spot the Yak Tiger 88. This is a tank that, you can pretty easily penetrate if you have the side or the lower plate. And we do spot the Scorpion G. We get a very nice 705 damage assisted right there, but we do take a hit from the TheFrXion K. 400 damage that we have taken, taking us down to 1000 HP on the vehicle. Now, the armor on this tank in a hold down position really is very reliable, but you do not want to overextend too much, and you do not want to be too cocky, because people tend to load a lot of premium shells when they play World of Tanks, and especially at tier 8, 9, and 10, I think the majority of the player base will not hesitate to switch to premium shells. One very interesting thing right here is that we can actually see the TheFrXion moving away. That means that there's only a batch at 25T AP sitting close to the base. And that also means that there's nothing else in the middle here except for the artillery sitting at K4. So this allows us an opening to go in there and do some very, very nice things with the 122 TM. This is a tank that just, it just hammers so hard at tier 8 as a medium tank with a single shot. Now I am missing the turbo, unfortunately, on the vehicle. I would have much rather preferred to have a turbo on it as well, but I want to have the high DPM, I want to have the view range, and I want to run the vertical stabilizer, because the vertical stabilizer really helps you out in these situations where you have to aim in and where you have to be able to engage several tanks that might be apart from one another. So having that vertical stabilizer really allows you to use this gun in a beautiful way. And you could see that we just bounced the TheFrXion S1 over there. He is coming back for more. I'm just trying to get a good angle on him to actually do some damage. And right now we're just farming the assistance damage on the S1 and on the T30. Now, because we have so much armor on this vehicle, these guys don't really want to get involved with us at all. So basically, in the end, this is all about just cleaning up. And because of the lack of DPM that you have in this tank, it is a bit weird, because you'll have to wait quite a long time until you can fully engage enemies. And during that time, the biggest problem is definitely if you do not have enough support, these guys will just out DPM you. The SU-130PM will do that. The Batchat 25T, if it's fully loaded, will probably do the same. It's just going to clip you. And that Panther 88 or Panther 2 will do the same. Unfortunately, that means that you'll just have to adapt, and you'll have to see that you hopefully don't push anything by yourself, and that you have a little bit of support with you. Because if that is the case, most of the time, I think you're going to be able to do a lot of damage, because the penetration on the gun is great, the armor layout on the vehicle is great, the mobility is decent enough, and basically you don't need to use any premium shells on most tier 8, 9, and even tier 10 tanks, and I think that makes it an extremely valuable tank. We do take a hit by the Tiger 2 though. I'm trying to get a pass on him and track him, and now I'm trying to use my turret armor for him to shoot so that I can survive that final engagement. And he certainly hits our turret, bounces off of it, giving us an additional 300 damage bounced, and that's how very powerful the 122 TM can be. 6,000 combined, almost 6,500 damage combined. That is pretty damn nice, and you know, this tank is incredibly good at range with its 122mm gun or 120mm gun, and I just think it's a very fun tank. I have nothing to say against it. It's not overpowered. It does have a very, very long reload, so it's not a vehicle for everyone. But I think if you enjoy Chinese, or you enjoy medium tanks with a lot of penetration, with decent mobility, decent protection as well, and great gun handling, this is certainly going to be a top pick, or should be one of the top picks if you have the choice of getting this tank, as long as you don't have a problem with the very low DPM. But either way, hopefully you guys did enjoy. As always, comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, have a good one. Hopefully this tank will be available for a marathon in the future or something like that. But I probably guess that's not going to be the case. Either way, I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, have a good one.